Good day folks, I am Wallace, and today we'll get through part 2 of the story of Diablo 3 and cover what happened in the expansion Reaper of Soul. Many questions need to be answered, starting with what happened to the Black Soulstone, and who and where was the 5th Archangel of Heaven. We'll also go through some deeper lore on the creation of Sanctuary, and the love story between Lilith and Inarius, and it's starting right now.
You have done well, Horadrim. Your service here is finished, and you should all run. Malthael. Brother, why? The Nephilim will stop you.
No one can stop death.
The Archangel of Wisdom was back as the Angel of Death, and rumors were speaking of an army of Reapers set loose on Westmarch. That was enough to convince our glorious Nephilim to rush there, and it didn't take long for Lorath Nar to find and update us on the latest news. Tyrell wanted to see us quickly, but innocent were unjustly assaulted, and so we agreed to meet up later in town. The story surrounding Malthael is vague. He was once the leader of the Angiris Council and the aspect of wisdom itself, and one day Inarius and Lilith stole the Worldstone. I'll speak more of them later on. And Malthael became consumed by discovering where they had took the giant crystal. But despite his archangelic power, he became extremely frustrated as he was not able to find it. He then started to leave heaven more and more frequently, and when Tyrell destroyed the Worldstone, Malthael's mood darkened and he ended up completely disappearing from the high heaven, and no one ever heard of him until today. But what he had been doing during these 20 years was still a mystery. On our side, we learn of a general named Torian who was defending a group of refugees at an old Zakharum cathedral. That would be our next destination, and along the way, we heard strange things.
No, no!
Those with demon blood must die.
All of this made no sense. Those people were no demons. We needed to speak to Tyrell. Slowly we made our way to the streets of Westmarch, killing reapers and freshly risen citizens until we reached the said cathedral we were told about. And look who was there, Tyrael and General Torian. How fortunate. We learned that Malthael was killing all these people because he was feeding on death. Every soul was making him stronger, and his goal was to end the eternal conflict. And now that the prime evil was gone, it was the perfect time to do it. But how is killing innocents supposed to end the conflict? Well, Nephilims, or humans, were descended from the union of angel and demon. So technically, they were half demon, and Malthael only cared about this part. That's also why he didn't kill Tyrael in Rekis' tomb, as he was a pure angelic being, even if he had become immortal. And because of their double nature, humans were allowed to choose between good and evil, and Malthael thought them unworthy of such a choice. After all, angels and demons were not choosing, right? That sound was coming from the cathedral, and what was waiting us there was quite disturbing. A dead maiden powering a soul crucible, an engine capable of transforming hundreds of people into Malthael's Reaper every hour. Needless to say that it was destroyed in a matter of time. Malthael was not going easy with his personal crusade, and we had no idea where he was hiding. He could be anywhere in creation. And we still didn't know how he intended to use the Black Soulstone, but there could be a way to find out, as when Malthael took the Soulstone, a sliver broke off. There was a chance that studying this broken part would reveal his plan, as it was still connected to the main stone. Any changes Malthael would make to it would reflect on our hand. That would be Tyrael's job, and we would hunt down the dead, starting by cutting Malthael's endless reinforcement with the destruction of 2 more soul crucibles that had been spotted by Torian's men. Before we left, we wanted to know more about this Lorath Nar. He explained that the Order of the Horadrim had been rebuilt by Tyrael to help him take the Soulstone from heaven and to protect mankind. Being the son of the commander of the Knight of Westmarch, Lorath was doomed to become a simple soldier. But in his heart, he had always wanted to become a Horadrim, growing up on the story of Tal Rasha and Jared Cain. How surprised was his father when he became one of them. We also did a tour of the Survivors' Enclave, but the ambience was sort of grim. Some had lost a child, a husband, or even their whole family. Nobles were accusing the poor of being the cause of this plague, and some random preacher was already trying to profit from the situation, asking people to join and donate to their new Order of Malthael to save their souls. Clever preachers. This joyful mood was getting us nervous, so we left through the Westmarch Commons. The story of this well-built city is complex, involving much politics, but in short, it started when the General Rekis and his paladins, all praising the Zakharum fate, came to subdue the uncivilized tribes of the Western world. Rekis turns out to be a fair and loved king, followed by his son Corsic, the one who built Bastion's Keep. The line broke when Corsic's son, Corellan, died with no heirs. The crown then controversially passed to Justinian I, II, and III until an insurrection broke out, led by a woman named Tira, who ended up taking control of the city. She unfortunately died of the plague, and the rebels were soon crushed by the Justinian dynasty. And right now, Westmarch is currently ruled by Justinian IV. As I said, lots of politics. That led us in Gideon's Row, where the hard feeling of the stone floor transformed into something smoother. Corpses, hundreds of corpses. We had found the second soul crucible, and were pleased to destroy it. Under this mess we found Miriam Jazia, a seer of the Vision people. She could see the future and was to join us until we found and destroyed the last crucible. So from Gideon's Row we went to Briarthorn Cemetery until we reached the Noble's Rest Courtyard, where Catharis, the matron of crucibles, was to face death. And on the final strike into the Master Crucible, we somewhat infuriated Urzael, the angel commanding Malthael's forces in Westmarch. Our task here was done, and we came back to Survivor's Enclave to see if Tyrael had made any progress. The sliver was changing. Malthael was trying to alter the Black Soulstone, but his purpose stays hidden for the moment. We also learned that other cities around, like Bramwheel and Kingsport, were also dealing with Malthael's attack. He was assaulting all Sanctuary at once. Urzael. The fallen angel was willing to do anything to finish collecting his soul. You see, Urzael was Malthael's lieutenant, much like Ijual was Tyrael's one, and when he disappeared, Tyrael asked Urzael to find his master. little did he know what was going to happen. Speaking again with Loratnar, we learn why the Black Soul Stone had not simply been destroyed. Crafted only by a man, unlike the others, there was no way to know exactly what would happen if it was to be crushed. So they decided to hide it instead. But nobody knew at this moment that Malthael was watching their every move. What would be done of the stone if we managed to retrieve it was just another question to add to the pile. Now it happens that Miriam knew of Urzael emplacement, a tower somewhere in the Westmarch Heights. I need to admit that Leah's vision were clearer than this new seer. Guess we're going north then, and through smokes and fire, a glowing open door attracted our gamer's keen spirit. This was Clifton Hall, and a regicide had just been committed by a lord named Winton, pretending to be the legitimate heirs of Corellan of the Rakis dynasty from his grandmother's side. But this lord had backstabbed his king during the biggest crisis Westmarch ever lived, and that was not worthy of a king, and would not be tolerated under a Nephilim's watch. Lord Winton died that day, as well as King Justinian IV, 2 more bodies in Westmarch. Our search continued, and through the wreckage of the city street we found it, the Tower of Corellan.
My master has begun his work on the stone. Nothing that you do matters.
As we know, Urzael had come to Sanctuary hoping to find his master, and was followed by Malthael's vanguard, who became the dangerous Death Maiden. But what they found first was not the Archangel of Wisdom, but humans, murdering, cheating, waging war while others were starving. Urzael came to the conclusion that if humans were to recover their ancient Nephilim power, all creation would be doomed, as in their choice between good and evil, humanity had overwhelmingly chosen evil. It disgusted Urzael, and when he finally found Malthael, he was not surprised to learn that his master had come to the same conclusion. That explains the reason behind their will to cleanse creation of humankind and get rid of Inarius' mistake. Killing Urzael was a major step in our battle against the Army of Death, and Westmarch was saved. But Malthael was still in the run, and on that note, Miriam had a solution which was not to please us, as only one person knew how to find Malthael, and it was the treacherous Adria, waiting for us in the tomb of Rakis, the place where all of this started. The entrance was said to be in Bloodmarch, contrary to the popular belief that the king's tomb was inside Westmarch. To assure that we would not kill the witch before she revealed Malthael's location, Loratnar would join us in this quest. Miriam warned us though, Adria was now channeling blood magic, and she still wanted to retrieve the Black Soulstone. We quickly made it to the entrance of the tomb, but Adria had already collapsed it, and in order to find another door, we would need to follow special guide stones spread across Bloodmarch. And for the first time since the beginning of this game, we were finally finding books on the somewhat sad story of Adria. She was raised by her father alone, a rich and proud man who believed that witches were the representation of evil. He was a distant father and never understood who Adria really was and what burden she was carrying, as he had more interest in his wealth than his own daughter. Adria lived most of her childhood in fear of who she was, in fear of what her father would do if he was to find out her real nature. The poor child ended up burning her dad's house while they were both inside. Little did he was surprised when he realized that she was not flammable. That day, Adria chose to abandon herself completely to the flame that was burning inside her and to become the witch she had always been. Secretly loved by the ones who were desperately in need of her dark talent, and hated by others who could not see beyond popular's belief. Knowing her backstory, it's no surprise that she ended up following Diablo. She also states that Leah was Diablo's only daughter and never felt any feelings for her. The rest of her story is well known. The guidestone slowly brought us inside the ruins of Corvus, which was one of the first cities of Sanctuary, built by a Nephilim called Deeresa the Builder, which by the way is the mother of the first Shadow and Immortal in Diablo Immortal. This city was also one of the main reasons why Rakis decided to come to the west at first. The other reason was to bring the light of the Zakarum to the heathens. He had uncovered an ancient tome who spoke of the Nephilim, had learned that they were no myth but humanity's ancestors, and wanted to find their city, hoping to find a way to reborn their legendary power in him and his people. Rakis gave much of his life finding the ruined city and took for sigil the Wolf of Corvus before proclaiming himself king. And as years passed, he came to the conclusion that the power of the Nephilim was somewhat kept silent. He even came to know of the presence of an artifact called the Worldstone in the north, and for that reason decided to invade the barbarians' land. But his quest for power ended there, as the barbarians were no people to be conquered. So those were the ruins of Corvus, and Adria's blood demons were everywhere. At this point we forced Lorath to stop. We were continuing alone, and would try not to kill Adria before she talks.
Let's see where you've been hiding, Malthael.
Adria.
The angels will never suffer us to live. They cannot accept the fact that we may choose our own path. At least demons are not so rigid in their beliefs.
Adria's dedication to her master Diablo was admirable, and she finally joined him in death. Lucky for us, we caught Adria when she was searching for Malthael, and the image that we saw earlier was Pandemonium, and the only way to get there was through the high heavens. Malthael was certainly watching our moves, as he had already sent Maiden Lamiel to destroy the gate to the Pandemonium.
He dares to attack us.
Imperius couldn't care less about humanity being destroyed, but now that Malthael was threatening his beloved high heaven, he was seeing his old brother in arms from a different perspective. He wanted him dead, and us, Nephilim, would have to do it. He led the way to the portal, but it only brought us in the battlefield around Pandemonium, and in order to enter the fortress, we would need to force it with a battering ram that needed 3 siege runes to be activated. We found them inside the guts of our enemies, and in the meantime, the Slaver of the Black Soulstone finally revealed Malthael's secret plan. He wanted to alter the Black Soulstone to capture all demonic essence from every creature in every plane of existence, including that elf part that belongs to each human, killing them in the process. Forced to admit that it was an efficient plan. The ram did his job well enough to bring us inside the legendary fortress, but to even stand a chance against Malthael, we would first need to become one with the power of the dead, otherwise our blade would just pass through him like air. The Guardian, a representation of our ancestors, said many dead heroes and warriors were willing to join us, but were still bound by Malthael's magic. Once freed from those ethereal chains, they would give us their strength and pierce the veil that shrouded the Reaper of Soul.
Nephilim. The Black Soulstone journeys through the portal to Sanctuary. Even now it spreads death across your world. And so ends the eternal conflict.
We were late, and still far from finding Malthael in this oddly shaped fortress called Pandemonium. It was built by Tyrael to protect the Eye of Anu, aka the Worldstone, and for many eons, it was a center of the eternal conflict, both angels and demons willing to own the place for themselves. It changed hand countless times, changing shape to match the nature of whoever was controlling it, until it was abandoned after the demon Lilith and the angel Inarius stole the Worldstone. Journals of their story were scattered all over Pandemonium, and you know, because they feature predominantly in Diablo 4, we'll have a quick look at their story. Inarius was a warrior, but he was tired of this eternal war between heaven and hell, so he decided to find and lead those who, like him, were weary of the conflicts, angels and demons alike. One day he got knocked down in combat and woke up in hell, where he was fortunate enough that his captor was Lilith, daughter of Mephisto, and she was sharing his will to escape the conflict. Together, they came up with a plan, stealing the Worldstone and using it to create a hidden world where they would escape this conflict with their fellow renegade brothers and sisters. They called this world Sanctuary. In their new oasis, they ended up having children and a new race was born, called Nephilim. For your information, they called their firstborn Linarian, better known under the name of Ratma. Lilith had not said everything to Inarius though. She was not really tired of the war, but doubted the prime evils were smart enough to win. So when she realized that Inarius was deeply in love with her, she started to use him, hoping that with his help, she could eventually win the eternal conflict. Stealing the most valuable artifact in creation was sort of the first step. What both Inarius and Lilith had not planned is that the Nephilim, creatures of good and evil, showed up to be way stronger than their parents, and that created some tension in Sanctuary. On one side, Lilith wanted to use them as her own army, but other renegade angels and demons were more of the let's kill them before they kill us or reveal the existence of our new world. Inarius was more on the genocide side, but wanted more time to think about it. Now the idea of her children being slaughtered drove Lilith mad, so mad that she started to kill all demons and angels in Sanctuary. And through a series of events, too long to describe here, Inarius had no other choice but to banish Lilith into the void. 2 times actually. Eventually the burning hells and the high heaven became aware of the existence of Sanctuary, and a truce was concluded to let the Nephilim mature and decide by themselves which side of the force they would choose. As for Inarius, he was finally brought in front of the Ingiris Council, who decided that for his sin he would be brought to Mephisto, where he would be tortured for eternity, and it is said that he is still there, bound with chains and ripped of his wings and eyelid. With that said, back to our story. Our barbarian found the soul prison, guarded by Urzael, and destroyed it, instantly bringing the souls of the willing in our heart. We were ready to face Malthael, and ripped his soul apart.
The Soul Stone is a born sanctuary. The blood of demons will soon be gone from all creation. You will be the last of your kind for a few moments. Death comes, Nephilim.
For an angel, Malthael looked pretty sick. It was almost a shame to kill him, and it would only take a few minutes, seeing how fast his life was going down. Until...
You are imbued with the power of death. But that is not the only weapon I possess.
What Malthael had just done was madness. Absorbing the Soulstone meant more power for him, but if we were to kill him, the souls of the 7 evils trapped in it would be freed. We had no choice, we had to deal with this immediate threat. So we killed him, saving Sanctuary for a second time, and freeing the soul of any creature that was suffering under Malthael's yoke. Evil was again unleashed in the burning hell, and the eternal conflict continued. That was the fate of this world, that was the curse of Sanctuary.
The Nephilim had done the impossible. By conquering death, he had redeemed the angels and saved all mankind. In that moment, with victory at hand, I saw the Nephilim in a new light. He is a hero who can defeat the champions of heaven and hell, and a barbarian who protects the innocent. But within him beats a mortal heart that will one day be tempted to corruption. On that day, will he have the strength to resist, or will he be our doom?
Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to give a like and sub for more, and see you later in Diablo 4.